Thank you for joining me for In Pursuit of Snow, a sport biography of Canadian Olympian and cross-country skier Dave Rees. My name is Tyree McCrackin. Thank you to NASSH for this chance to share my work. I'm in Treaty 6 territory and homeland of Métis Region 4, where I live on the North Saskatchewan River watershed and work at our main campus at the University of Alberta. My MA thesis at the University of Alberta is titled A Cross-Country Life, a sport biography of Canadian Olympian and cross-country skier Dave Rees, pictured here with me. This is Mount Rundle in the Day Lodge at Canmore Nordic Centre in Alberta, Canada. Much of my research was done from an uncomfortable kitchen chair about a 3-hour drive north of this location, but this is the place that I associate most with my research project. My research began and ended here in Canmore. Dave Rees, the participant in this sport biography study, lives just down the road from the Canmore Nordic Centre in the Spray Village Athletes Housing. And it is here where I conducted my first oral history interviews with Dave Rees, then aged 76. My research concluded here in March, where I was able to attend the Masters World Cup, visit with Rees, who was the chief of competition, and ski the trails that had just been raced upon by over 750 cross-country ski racers. My research started as a quest to see changes in outdoor sport in Canada through the lens of a lifelong insider. I then uncovered the story of a career and life in sport worth documenting. While researching and writing, I realized that Rees influenced the development of skiing in post-war Canada in more ways than I had previously envisioned. This research brought a fuller picture to both the depth and breadth of his career. I had aimed to investigate the history of cross-country skiing in relation to societal trends with Dave Rees as a key entry point and source of insider knowledge. It became clear after initial investigation that Rees was a more important figure in this history than I was aware of, and that there was no cohesive record telling the full story of his contributions. The thesis then shifted from oral history to a full sport biography of the life of Dave Rees and his defining influence on the growth and development of cross-country skiing at both the elite and participatory levels in post-war Canada. Through his roles, first as an athlete and then as an administrator and sport official, Rees was present at 5 Olympic Games. He was a renowned expert on coaching, trails, events, and officiating cross-country skiing. Born during World War II to Canadian parents in Barnard Castle, England, the young Rees was soon returned to the bait that would draw him throughout his life: snow. It was on the snow of Kirkland Lake, Ontario, that Rees first stood on skis, just shy of his 3rd birthday. Both his father and uncle were skiers, and he was surrounded by transplanted Finns in Northern Ontario with their skis, jumps, and saunas. Going to the Olympic Games was always a goal for Rees as he skied his way up the ranks. He recalls walking home from Boy Scouts in about 1956 down a darkened street in North Bay, Ontario. There was a television set glowing in a store window, which was a novelty in and of itself. The 1956 Olympics were showing on that television, and Dave, stopping and pressing his nose against the glass, thought, "Wow, that's cool." And it became a goal, says Rees. Not a driving goal that I couldn't live without, as he put it, but a goal nonetheless. Rees was an alternate on the 1964 Games team, but did not attend the Olympics. He remained a member of the Canadian national team and continued to train and excel in competitions, and was a perennial medalist at events in Canada. By fall of 1968, he had enrolled in graduate school to study geology and was feeling the need to focus on his studies. He continued to train, however, with 20-mile runs on the weekends and shorter workouts in between. The national champions that year were in Morin Heights, Quebec, just over the border from Ottawa. "I did pretty well," Rees said. "I didn't win or anything, but I made the Olympic team. So here I was suddenly in negotiation with Carleton about taking the rest of the winter off." In Grenoble, Rees skied the 10, 15, and 50-kilometer cross-country events, as well as the relay. Additionally, it was necessary to borrow a biathlon athlete to make up Canada's cross-country relay team of 4. The 50K race started on ice, which quickly melted into slush. The Canadians did not have proper wax, and Dave's wax was stripped from the birch-based hickory edge skis quickly. He ended up skiing on wet wood, saying, "It took me just under 3 hours, which was pretty bad. I had no grip, no glide. I'm not proud of my results, but I won't say it was a bad experience. The conditions we were doing this under were pretty hopeless." Reese managed to finish and place in all the events he entered. From his first skiing as a toddler, skis in as a toddler in Kirkland Lake to racing and planning the Masters World Cup, Reese has participated in, administered, coached, and guided at all levels of the sport. For Reese, skiing is a way of life, and it has shaped every aspect of his life. Dave and his wife, Jean, have made Canmore their home primarily for access to the snow. Both remain serious in their devotion to their craft, skiing daily in the winter, running, cycling and mountain biking in the summer, and until recently, roller ski training as well. The time spent training is punctuated with races and events around the world. When asked why he still wants to compete, Reese said that for him, it's the intrinsic desire to go as hard as you can go. The examination of Reese's youth and his involvement with skiing is valuable in that it exemplifies the transition of sport in post-war Canada. Reese began participating in the sport during a time when Nordic skiing was low-tech, localized, and provincial. He was involved in as cross-country developed and grew, becoming an international competitor in the late 1960s. Reese began teaching at Nipissing University after completing his master's degree. He completed a best-selling book on cross-country skiing while completing his PhD and served as a professor of geology and geography at Nipissing University for over 30 years. At the same time, he amassed a continuous record of volunteer service to cross-country skiing in a wide variety of roles. As an academic, Reese developed the organizational skills and diplomatic capabilities to allow him to function as an effective sport administrator. He also exhibited the diplomacy and tact required to achieve organizational change in sport institutions. Reese's career in academia meshed well with his work as a volunteer sport administrator. A testament to his organizational and diplomatic skills, Reese headed the movement to split from Alpine Canada under the Canadian Ski Association and form an autonomous national sport organization more in tune with the sport of Nordic skiing. Dave Reese's personal inclination to keep records and his academic skills have enabled him to function as a storyteller and keeper of the history of cross-country skiing in Canada after the Second World War. And the culmination of this lies in the Canadian Museum of Nordic Skiing, seen here in the picture. Over the decades, Reese has amassed a large personal collection of skiing memorabilia and artifacts. The need for room in his basement, the recognition of a need for a dedicated Nordic ski museum in Canada, and his own organizational skills brought about the birth of the Canadian Museum of Nordic Skiing. As Reese decided what to include and what to omit, he moved from being a collector to a curator. The material culture in the museum is a vehicle through which Reese tells the story of Nordic skiing in Canada. Closing out my research, I was able to attend the final day of the Masters World Cup in Canmore, where Dave Reese was the chief of course. This massive event welcomed over 800 athletes, along with coaches and supporters from around the world to the Nordic Center. The parking lot had multiple high-end camper van units, mostly with US plates. Plates from various Canadian provinces told me that others had driven in for the event from across Canada. Flags of other nations adorned the toques and tights of participants from across Europe. There were shuttles from downtown running athletes to and from the venue. At the race course itself, amidst the cowbells, cheers rang out in multiple languages, and racers ranged from 30-something powerhouses just out of international competition to 80-something athletes still showing their prowess and fighting spirit, going all in on grueling distances. They were the personification of the spirit Dave Reese described when discussing his motives, when he spoke of an intrinsic desire to go as hard as you can go. The event appeared to run like clockwork, with racers in different categories lining up and starting at exact intervals. Skiers in multiple lap races came past the starting area, picking up refreshments from volunteers. The ski corrals held those who were readying for the start of their races, meters away from exhausted competitors crossing the finish line to mark the end of their World Cup. There were timers, starters, marshals, and all manner of volunteers who worked in cheerful certainty. At the heart of the hustle was Dave Reese. He moved from place to place like a real leader and was supporting the volunteers and making sure that everyone had what they needed to complete their assigned jobs, ensured the smooth execution of running a world-class race. The tracks were groomed to perfection and the course carefully laid out. Racers in tight aerodynamic suits waxed and re-waxed skis for the changing conditions. They carried impossibly light, brightly colored skis and carbon fiber poles with tiny racing baskets, wore streamlined boots and futuristic sunglasses. Most had multiple pairs of skis to choose from in their quiver. Yet less than 200 meters from the starting line, in a display case inside the Canmore Nordic Center, stood the Edsbins birch-based skis with hickory edges that had carried Dave Reese through every cross-country event in the 1968 Olympics in Grenoble. Throughout that change, Reese has been there at the forefront of progress while keeping track of the past. Some 34 years after presiding over the competition site of the 1988 Winter Olympics, Reese is still an invaluable source of knowledge and leadership, with intimate knowledge of place and community at the Canmore Nordic Center. Dave Reese has embraced both participatory and elite competition ethics, laying the athletic, educational, and administrative groundwork to expand Canadian development in cross-country skiing. This lifelong athlete and volunteer has not only witnessed the transformations of Nordic skiing, he has been one of its collaborative architects and memory keepers, defining his sport over more than 6 decades. Acknowledgements go to libraries and archives, and especially thanks to Dave Reese and Jean Bristow for the historical images that were provided through Dave Reese's scrapbooks. Some of the points of departure that are important are listed here, these secondary sources certainly gave information that helped me form a complete picture of skiing in post-war North America, as well as in Canada specifically. The oral history interviews were extremely valuable, especially when we think of them as supplemented by the archival records and the private papers I got from Dave Reese. So I end this presentation with an image of research. Here I am in the Government of Alberta Archives in Canmore with my supervisor, Dr. Pearl Ann Reichwein, who has been supportive and who's been a supportive and encouraging mentor in this study. And that is not a painting behind us. That's the view out the window of where we got to work. Thank you very much.